This is a very important question regarding the statistics at Oasis. What are the survival rates? What are the remission rates, etc.? Well, in order to really answer that or any question, one must always define what we're talking about. We have to understand what it is we're talking about. And if we look into cancer, we'll understand that everyone that you see probably has some degree of cancer in them, but it has not yet become either detectable or impacting their lives. Okay, there's no lumps or bumps, there's no pain, there's no change in the way they are, and it's not diagnosable. If they did a PET scan or they did any kind of standard blood test, it wouldn't be detectable. There would be no changes. Okay, so it's kind of part of being alive in the 21st century that we are exposed to so many incredible toxins on all levels, from electromagnetic to food to off-gassing of paints, etc. I mean, it's unfathomable how many toxins we are exposed to. So clearly, we're all walking around with a small amount of malignancy, and some larger than others in our bodies. And so when we talk about remission, we're talking really about a person who comes in with a diagnosed cancer that can be detected either on PET scan, CAT scan, MRI, or some sort of scan, and has some sort of biochemical markers, usually, not always, but biochemical markers such as tumor markers, etc., liver function tests or kidney function tests. So somehow it can show up. So what we want to do when we were talking about remission, we want to be able to say that no longer is this cancer detectable. We can't find it on PET scan, we can't find it on CAT scan, there are no biochemical changes, and the person feels great. The person is back to feeling wonderful or healthy. Okay, so that would be a remission. Is it gone? No one knows. No one really knows. Now, what we do know, though, there's a Dr. Kobayashi in Japan who has an incredible test called a TMCA, tumor marker combination assay, where he is able to actually do a simple blood test and that he's developed and can actually tell you if you're 2, 3, 4, 5 years away from having a clinical manifestation of cancer. And so he has a different classification. He has a stage 1 is 0 cancer, and stage 5 is 1 gram of cancer, which is usually what we would call a stage 1. So his stage 5 is our stage 1. Okay, and that's detectable. And so at stage 3, which would probably be micrograms, or stage 4, which would be nanograms, you would still realize that you're probably 3 to 5 years away from having it. Now, when he has done this test to people over the last several decades in Japan, he has found that only a handful of people have not had any, have been stage 1, or that is no cancer. And these are usually adolescents who had pretty healthy lifestyles and lived in rural situations. Okay, so basically, what we have to realize is when we're defining remission, we're defining undetectable by standard means. Now, the word cure we don't even use because we don't subscribe to the paradigm of cancer as being a disease. We realize that it's a homeostatic corrective measure that the body is engaged in to maintain functional integrity, and that what we need to do is remove most of the reasons why the body has to do that, and that's what we do. So if that is a little unclear, I'll discuss that at another time. But I just want you to know that we don't look at the word cure because we don't buy into the concept of disease. But what we do buy into is remission, right? And we do buy into is survival. Those are very, very important. Now, survival means what? In standard oncology, it means 5 years. Okay? So even if a person dies on the day after the 5th year anniversary of their diagnosis, they're still considered a cure. Okay? We don't consider that a cure. Okay? We don't look at the 5 years as being a survival. Okay? So that's why many places are looking at, when you ask them to do preventative work in cancer, they call it early detection. Well, early detection just means you find it out earlier, so you're more likely to make that 5-year mark and then fall into that statistical category. That's not what you want, and that's not what we want. What we want is real survival. That means that the cancer is no longer an issue. So if there are a few cells of cancer in your body that are undetectable, they're no longer an issue in your life, and you'll go on to live your life and die eventually from some other reason. That's really what we're talking about. And so when we look at what happens with us, we see that just like most alternative cancer centers that are really good, that use a lot of all of the really cutting edge standard alternative therapies, and they're pretty much all the same in that regard. Anywhere from 65 to 70% of the people in all stages will leave either in remission or maybe a small lump left, and they're going to go get it excised or whatever it is that however people decide to finish up their work, because there's a variety of reasons why people don't stay for the full course. But we're seeing that if they did, it would be close to 70%. But who's alive at 10 years? Who's alive at 5 years? Well, we know the overall worldwide prognosis for stage 4 cancer at 5 years is 2.3%. Okay, what we're seeing is that people go away, and we're having we can't follow up with everybody because we lose touch with people. But for those that stay in touch, we're finding that the ones who have really embraced the lifestyle changes are still with us. And that's amounting to close to 20%. Now, so where we see our failing is our inability to inspire people enough to change their lives. Because what happens is people go back to their normal lifestyles, and whatever factors were involved before they came are still there. So if they had relationships that were toxic, or they lived in an environment that was toxic, etc., those things start to impact their life again. And so what we are doing now is we are developing a very comprehensive continuation program where people can either come back physically, which we already have. People do come back physically, but it's often very difficult. If they live on the East Coast and we're on the West Coast, or they live in Europe or Asia and we're on the West Coast of the U.S., Arizona, it's often very difficult. So we're developing sort of a web-based continuation program, which we'll be able to do. And that's very important. People need to be connected, feel connected. Otherwise, most people go back to their lifestyle, and they're the only ones doing it. And that becomes very, very difficult. So that's where we see the failing. And that's also where we see our distinction. Our distinction is teaching people how to stop making cancer. But we can't let that stop the day they walk out of the door. So that's really where we are in our program, is how do we reach out and keep people walking the path of no cancer.